In this video we're going to have a look at respiration, and to start with I just want you to sit there for a minute and just do nothing. Close your eyes, chill out, don't do a thing. Now even doing that, your body needs a supply of energy to stay alive. Specifically, your lungs will need to keep breathing in and out, your heart will need to keep beating, your brain needs a lot of energy to keep ticking over, and all your other internal organs will need a constant supply of energy. In addition, every cell in your body will need some energy just to stay alive at every passing second. So before we look at how this is achieved through the process called respiration, just to zoom in again, we're looking at an organism such as you, and we're going to zoom in a few levels to the individual level of a cell. And specifically, the part of the cell we're looking at here are the mitochondria, where most of the cell's respiration is going to take place. As we mentioned earlier on in the video on specialized cells, the internal membrane of the mitochondria is all foldy in out. Again, that increases surface area across which respiration can happen. So, respiration is a chemical reaction in which energy is given off by burning glucose with oxygen. Aerobic respiration is called that because you need the air, you need oxygen to do it. So let's have a look. So it's happening all the time in every cell of your body, and you take the fuel, which is glucose, and you combine it with oxygen, you kind of burn it, and it gives off some energy. It also gives off byproducts like carbon dioxide and water. So why do we need to respire? Well, firstly, just to stay alive, to break down toxins in your body, to assemble small molecules into bigger ones, to fuel repair and growth. You need a constant supply of energy to do that. By the way, this is a picture from The Last of the Mohicans. Awesome film. Well worth the watch, provided you're 18. I'm pretty sure it's 18. Your muscles need a constant supply of energy as well. And I'm not just talking about mad, muscly people. Normal people, so your muscles need a lot of energy just to keep ticking along. Not only to contract, which we'll be looking at later on, but also just muscle mass needs a lot of energy. And finally, thermoregulation. So mammals and birds have an ability to regulate the temperature inside their body. For instance, when it gets too hot, we can sweat, and if it gets too cold, you can shiver to produce heat, and you can also divert blood away from the surface of your skin. These mechanisms take energy to run. For you as an organism to supply all your cells with everything they need to do respiration all the time, you need several organ systems to cooperate with one another. Now, we've already looked in detail at the digestive system, but to summarise, it breaks down food into smaller bits, in particular glucose as we're looking at here, and absorbs them into your blood so that your circulatory system can distribute them around the body. Your circulatory system will bring the glucose from the digestive system and also oxygen from the breathing system, which we'll look at in a minute, to all the cells in your body. The circulatory system will also carry away the waste products, especially carbon dioxide, so that they can be gotten rid of. On a quick note here, if you look at the blood vessels on the bottom right, the difference between the artery in the middle and the vein on the far right, the artery's got a much narrower cross section. This maximizes the blood pressure, and it's also got a layer of muscle, which we'll come into it later on. Another thing to note is the veins there have a valve in, which will help to keep blood flowing in the right direction. And on a side note, even though they've drawn the vein here as being blue, obviously the blood is red. It's just a kind of a way to keep track of which one's which. Okay, so your blood is red. Okay, your circulatory system works a lot like a road network. Its job is to distribute stuff. And just like a road network, if you relied only on the motorways, you wouldn't really be able to get exactly to where you're going. You get most of the way there, down the main routes, but then you'd have to kind of branch off. So here's our area roughly up here, and if you can see, Wesley isn't even on the map. Wigan isn't even on the map. You need the roads to kind of branch off to get you there, and that's exactly what they do. Your circulatory system also branches off, and again it will branch off into smaller and smaller blood vessels and into capillaries, which are very, very thin-walled blood vessels. The other system which plays a role in respiration is the breathing system. The breathing system brings air into your lungs where gas exchange can happen, where oxygen will diffuse from the alveoli into your blood, and carbon dioxide will diffuse from the blood out into the alveoli where they can be exhaled. Look at the video on diffusion for a bit more detail on how this works. Here's a picture of some lungs, and again there's that kind of branching system where the air will branch off into smaller and smaller bits, and they will end up in the alveoli, those special structures at the end of the tubes inside the lungs. Okay, earlier on I mentioned about respiration being used for muscles, and for this I just want you to try something. Put your hands out like I've done there, line up the fingertips. Go on, give it a try. No one's looking at you. Now they are. And just kind of bring your fingers closer together, like that, and you'll find that they will kind of interlock and they'll bulge outwards. Now this is exactly the same thing as what happens with the muscle. Your muscles are made of muscle fibers which line up in the same kind of pattern as we just did with your fingers. And when the muscle contracts and squeezes, the fibers move closer together but bulge outward. If you don't believe me, try and stick out your right arm, put your left arm on your bicep, and as you move your right arm up, kind of feel what happens to the muscle that pulls it up. It should get shorter but much denser. So just to summarize that bit, your muscles will contract, which means they get shorter but thicker, and this will take energy to do this. Now muscles also use energy even when they're resting, which is why somebody with a lot of muscle will need more calories in their diet just to exist than somebody with less muscle mass. Finally, muscles have the ability to store some of the glucose they're going to use as fuel as glycogen. This means you can store it in the muscle itself for very quick activation when the muscle needs to contract. Okay, so we've looked a little bit at muscles in general. Let's zoom out a bit. Look, this is going to be a bit easier to get your head around. What happens physically when you exercise? Well, the first thing is your heart rate is going to increase to pump more blood around your body. Your arteries will dilate, those blood vessels will widen. This will allow more blood to flow to the muscles. This will increase the blood supply, meaning that more glucose from the digestive system and more oxygen from the breathing system can reach the muscles faster. This way they can be used very efficiently for respiration. Also, in addition to your heart rate increasing, your breathing rate will increase as well. You'll breathe faster, and you'll also breathe deeper. This increases the amount of oxygen you can get into your blood, and also the amount of carbon dioxide, the byproduct of respiration, that you can get rid of as it diffuses out of your blood in the alveoli of your lungs. People who exercise regularly will start to notice some improvements in how their body works. Their heart volume will increase, which will mean that the heart can pump more blood with each beat. And in turn that means your heart doesn't have to beat as fast to keep your body supplied with oxygen and glucose. So your resting heart rate will go down. Also your lung volume will increase. You can get more air into your lungs. And because of this again, you don't need to breathe as often, so your breathing rate will decrease. Here's a diagram showing recovery time. We're going to look at it bit by bit, but for now just have a look. The red line is somebody who is unfit and the blue line is somebody who is fit. Along the y-axis we've got heart rate, how fast the heart is beating. Along the x-axis we've got time. Let's have a look in a bit more detail. Okay, so at the start, before there's any exercise, the unfit person will already have a higher heart rate than the fit person. Again, because the fit person's body is a bit more used to exercise, his or her heart can contain more blood, so it doesn't have to pump as often. When exercise begins, the unfit person's pulse rate shoots up very quickly. The fit person's pulse rate will also increase to keep his muscles supplied, but not as fast a rate as the unfit person. During the exercise, somebody who is out of shape is going to need to keep a higher pulse rate to keep their muscles supplied with oxygen and glucose, whereas somebody who's fit doesn't need to have as high a heart rate. And finally, the recovery time, the time it takes for your heart rate to go back to normal after exercise, is much longer in somebody who's unfit than in somebody who's fit. This same graph that we looked at here can apply to breathing rate just as easy. You'll see the same patterns. As long as you're able to keep enough oxygen supplied to your muscles, you can keep doing aerobic respiration, which is very efficient and gives lots of energy. However, if you're unable to keep up with the oxygen demand from your cells, you can use anaerobic respiration. This is respiration that doesn't require oxygen. In it, the fuel glucose also releases energy just like in aerobic respiration, but not as much. The yield is much lower. And there's no other byproducts other than lactic acid. So if you work out a lot, you know that point where you go, feel the burn or whatever, that's the lactic acid actually damaging your muscles. Now your body needs to deal with that lactic acid eventually by using oxygen to kind of neutralize it. So there will be a debt to be paid at some point. Quick note here, the anaerobic respiration in our bodies is very different from the anaerobic respiration of yeast. They produce ethanol and carbon dioxide. If we did this, anytime you go for a marathon or for a run or anything, you start getting drunk on the alcohol that your cells have produced. So it's pretty good. I mean, it'll be funny, but it's probably for the best.